Saludos amigos, los invitamos a escuchar la mesa redonda de Roundtable, donde discutimos los temas del día, hablando de política, educación y otros temas, locales, regionales y mundiales, por USA la Radio. Amigos oyentes de USA la Radio, están escuchando la mesa redonda, les habla Fernando Méndez. Danny Ramos controlando el tablero. Estamos aquí desde la ciudad del amor fraternal, from the city of brotherly love. And usually we start with COVID, and there's a lot of news on COVID today. News related to one deal between Merck and one of the other makers, I believe Johnson & Johnson, to manufacture more vaccines, so that will speed up the process. I keep pointing out to friends and enemies and anybody who will listen that this whole thing with the vaccine is a very positive development, that we're going to have a large part of the population vaccinated by the end of this summer. And so many people are pessimistic, and as we know, there are many people opposed to the vaccine, and for surprising reasons. We know the QAnon crowd, the Trumpist extremists who follow the advice of Dr. Donald Trump, who suggested we inject Lysol into our veins. So some people follow that advice, and they are opposed to the vaccine. Some people are just afraid of vaccines in general. And as we mentioned in previous programs, there's good reason for some of the minority population to be concerned about vaccines and to be used as guinea pigs for some of the experiments. But with all the stuff I have read, my limited knowledge on this subject, I would swear that Dr. Fauci and Dr. Gupta, Dr. Birx, all these people who are involved in the vaccine are straightforward, they're straight shooters, they're not people with an angle, with an interest in profit. They actually are scientists interested in helping humanity. So I would not attribute ulterior motives to someone like Dr. Fauci. I mean, let me say this also along the way, because we know what happened in New York. The one person who took the lead as a national figure, Governor Cuomo of New York, now finds himself in hot water, but not because of COVID, but because of what has been the cause of the downfall of many of our political leaders, their behavior towards women. In an era in which women have awakened to the rights they have to not to tolerate sexual improprieties on the part of superiors, on the part of men in general. And now here's Andrew Cuomo in trouble because first it was one woman and then two, and now there's a third one. And as has happened with other cases, this could escalate if more women feel encouraged to reveal that in different circumstances, in different places. The governor was disrespectful and made improper advances to them. In the case of the last woman, she's alleging that he says, "May I kiss you?" At a wedding. So, anyway, with that in mind, nevertheless, we have not heard anything like that from Dr. Fauci. Um, and he has been the, uh, the voice of reason, well informed scientists. In fact, uh, Morning Joe, Joe Scarborough, played a clip of Dr. Fauci exactly 1 year ago, on March 2nd of 2020, saying that this virus was serious, that it could cause us to have to close schools, it could impede travel, it would close businesses, it would stop gatherings at large venues. So if it sounds familiar, it's because that was prophetic. That's exactly what happened to us, to this country. And look what our economy is uh, from March of last year to March of 2021. And we have seen, we can feel the economic and health consequences of a virus that overtook the population to the tune of 28 million cases and over 500,000 people who have died. So, and at every step of the way, in February, in March of 2020, and even later, we had the former president of the United States saying not to worry, that it was a matter of days before the virus left like magic. It spread like magic because he refused to recognize that it was serious. He knew full well that it was serious, but even to this day, he claims that his administration did an excellent job. We know they didn't. It's tragic. And now he and his followers continue to sell the big lie that they were very effective in dealing with COVID, and also the bigger lie that Mr. Trump won the election, but Biden is the illegitimate president, according to them. Now, closer to home, this is from Billy Penn News. 53 Philly elementary schools will welcome students next week. So that's good news. One of the frustrations for parents, not only in Philadelphia, but around the country, has been the school closings, obviously. And again, not to bring Cuomo again to in this picture, in this context, I recall that one of the things he said all the time was that if we could open schools, if we could guarantee the safety of our children in schools, vaccinate teachers, and open schools, that would help immediately to propel forward this economy. People could go back to work and so on. So here we are. 53 Philly elementary schools will welcome students next week. The frustration of Philly parents over schools not being open is national news. The New York Times reports that some are suing or otherwise agitating to get kids back in classrooms. So while one family of 4 in North Philly say they are moving to Florida because they are frustrated with what's happening in Philly, that's that should concern in the Kenya administration for they need to move forward quickly. The school district yesterday announced it has reached a deal with teachers' unions that allow 53 schools to welcome pre-K through grade 2 students on March 8th. Keystone Crossroads reports most teachers are getting vaccinated. Um, CHAP did 2,000 jabs last week and is on track to do 9,000 weekly going forward. And as we just announced, with the arrival of Johnson & Johnson vaccine and an agreement with Merck to help with the manufacture, we're going to have uh, enough vaccines. Certainly, now they're speaking of hundreds of millions of vaccines available by the end of the year. So that's extremely positive news. Um, so my friend Martin Pratt, who likes to be negative about all this, even he would have to sort of concede that these are positive developments. Um, so they have been frustrated with remote learning. Remote learning uh, is possible. It has helped to bridge the gap uh, for many people. It has helped mostly grown-ups, adults, to continue holding jobs with Zoom meetings, with on the telephone and conversations, etc. But that is not, that doesn't, there is no substitute for the interaction in offices. And by the way, speaking of interaction, that is the one thing that is lacking in terms of our students. That physical contact with kids of their own age early on in life, from pre-K on, the ability to become socialized, to learn to deal with people of different backgrounds and different attitudes towards life, and all that, that would help an individual adjust uh, to his existence or her existence. And that has, this COVID has made it very difficult to have large numbers of people in one place. Although, from all the studies, all the reports that we have seen, kids are uh, the least at risk in terms of the population. So, if we can help them get back into the classroom, if we can reopen schools, that would be excellent. I mean, that's one of those things that um, you cannot replace, as I say. And now I'm reading from this report. It says everywhere else, kids are given better opportunities and chances other than Philadelphia, said this woman, Miss Tyler, who's planning a radical change, moving her family to Florida. Um, she says everywhere else outside of Philly, people are attending classes. Well, that's not exactly true, but I mean, it's happening, ahead of Philly in many places. It is happening, but it's a bit of an exaggeration to say that it's happening in many other places outside of Philly. It's one of those things. Is a national issue. It's not just Philadelphia. And if we listen to the doctors, we have to be careful with reopening schools. I mean, it's okay for the kids, but we need to vaccinate the teachers. So the kids might have some sort of immunity, which is not always the case, but because there are many kids who have been infected. But the teachers need to be vaccinated. They need to be protected. And so that's what the union in Philadelphia has finally agreed, because they can see the possibility of a vaccine quickly. So um, that's not to say that there are no problems. We have, in fact, you might recall that we had a problem with a group that signed a contract with the city of Philadelphia, and then it had to be rescinded because this non-profit group turned out to be for-profit, and the city had to disconnect from that, rescind that agreement because the situation changed. Well, vamos a tomar una breve pausa aquí en USA la Media, de Roundtable. Les habla Fernando Méndez, Dani Ramos controlando la máquina digital. Estamos hablando desde el corazón de la ciudad del amor fraternal. No se vayan, regresamos en un momento.
Saludos amigos, los invitamos a escuchar La Mesa Redonda de Roundtable, donde discutimos los temas del día, hablando de política, educación y otros temas, locales, regionales y mundiales, por USA la Radio.
Señores oyentes de USA la Media, estamos aquí de nuevo con su programa La Mesa Redonda de Roundtable. Desde el corazón de la ciudad del amor fraternal, les habla Fernando Méndez, Dani Ramos, controlando la máquina digital, y estamos hablando sobre COVID y el efecto del COVID sobre nuestros estudiantes, lo que ha pasado en este país con las escuelas cerradas, las consecuencias no solo para los niños, sino para los jóvenes en universidades, donde esto de estudios a control remoto, pues no es la forma ideal. Es lamentable, pero sí hay gente que puede hacerlo, se beneficia, pero aquí están las desventajas. Primero que todo para los niños, realmente jóvenes. Con esto de COVID se descubrió, pues, se reveló la desventaja de las minorías, los más pobres, sin tener acceso a la tecnología, Wi-Fi, sin tener acceso a computadoras, etcétera, etcétera. Y eso ha causado un desnivel, un desequilibrio en el aprendizaje de los jóvenes. En cuanto a universidades, bueno, ya sabemos, en cuanto a escuelas secundarias y universidades, los efectos no solamente académicos, en cuanto a la dificultad del aprendizaje a control remoto, para escuelas secundarias, los profesores, yo me pasé más de 3 décadas enseñando, y yo entiendo las dificultades que estos profesores han encontrado en enseñar a control remoto, en cuanto a la disciplina, en cuanto a asegurarse de que los estudiantes están participando, prestando atención. Hay que diseñar toda clase de trucos para mantener su atención, para asegurarse de que están cumpliendo con sus tareas, etc. Eso en cuanto a la secundaria, y tal vez hasta la primaria también, pero problemas para ambos grupos, para escuelas primarias, secundarias y college, universidades. En cuanto a otras actividades, independientemente de lo académico, por ejemplo, un estudiante que tenía una beca ya planeada por su desempeño en los deportes, que fuera el béisbol, el fútbol, el básquetbol, o que fuera por su desempeño académico. Y de repente, cuando no hay una escuela, no está funcionando normalmente el sistema, ni las escuelas, ni los exámenes, ni las universidades, esto queda todo en suspenso. Muchos de ellos han perdido sus becas, muchos de ellos han perdido una oportunidad, por ejemplo, en la secundaria, de tener una beca para participar en deportes a nivel universitario, y los universitarios han perdido la oportunidad de que se vean sus habilidades deportivas para participar en los deportes a nivel profesional. So, todo el mundo ha sido afectado adversamente por esta situación del COVID. But, estaba mencionando aquí en Filadelfia, además de la dificultad que ha tenido la ciudad en cuanto a abrir escuelas y la protesta de muchos profesores, inclusive a través del Estado hubo una protesta de parte de los directores de escuela. The principals of schools didn't want to open schools. So, but there was a positive development in Philly with the opening of mass vaccination at the run by FEMA at the convention center. Only to find out now, because in Philly there was a site offering mass vaccinations, and already has to fend off people who are not eligible. Why? Somebody made a mistake and put out a form that people quickly filled out. And so thousands of Philadelphians signed up to get a vaccine. And it turns out that that they may not qualify because that would bypass the normal categories that they have targeted for a vaccine. So that's another one more problem in Philly. When to vaccines, we already had the problem that we mentioned briefly before, the company that turned out to be not for profit, but it turned out to be for profit, and then now canceling hundreds of appointments made by people who should not yet be vaccinated. It became a major time investment on the first day of a federal mass vaccination site in Philadelphia. So there we are. I don't know. That it's extremely frustrating for many people who were hopeful immediately. For people who should be getting a vaccine because they are exposed, because they are in close contact with customers, or because again, teachers who should be vaccinated, and the only way they qualify would be because they are part of the target group. Let's hope this gets straightened out quickly, especially now with the announcement of more vaccines that would be available. This concern nationally about what they are calling the effects of long haulers. I mean, what people who recover from COVID, but who would suffer effects of the illness for a long time. So this, Dr. Fauci was speaking about concern for that because it's worrisome. And here we are, a year into the pandemic. As I say, March 2nd, one time when Dr. Fauci was quoted announcing all the possible things that would happen to us, and in fact, he was prophetic because it has happened. So a year and a half into the pandemic, less than half of students nationwide, less than half, are attending public schools that offer traditional full-time schedules. So many parents are beginning to rebel, frustrated with the pace of reopening and determined to take matters into their own hands. And we already mentioned some of the people who are a woman who's taking her family to Florida because apparently schools are opening there faster than any other place. So I don't know. Like many left-leaning metropolitan areas across the country, its elected officials, teachers' unions, and health agencies have urged strict caution, putting more districts on hybrid schedules, while some remain fully remote. In Philly, where classrooms have been empty for a year, a reopening deal between the teachers' union and the district appears imminent. but it is expected to bring back only a portion of the youngest students. So we know colleges that just decided to close because of the pandemic and close until particular dates. And let's see how many of them have not announced when they are reopening. Many of them expect to open again by April or May. And as I said, I think there are positive developments, and I think the vaccine might help in that aspect by May or so. People people will do it, but the voices are growing louder for the people to from the people to open schools, and so we'll see what happens. Um, it is it's not the same for a kid to sit in front of a screen, in front of a computer screen for learning. The effects of um, socialization cannot be underestimated. Just partaking of other people in the classroom environment, and you learn not only from your teachers, you learn from your classmates. And there are people in the more affluent areas of this country that where they will um, probably quickly benefit from remote learning, but that's not happening in the cities. In Chicago, Los Angeles, Philadelphia, we know that that's not the case. So working class parents of color whose communities have been harder hit by the COVID-19 are less eager for in-person learning. But the rising frustration of parents like this woman, Miss Taylor that we mentioned before, they will take drastic steps to remedy the situation for themselves and their families. So that's one of the things. People will take matters into their own hands when they don't see solutions forthcoming. So, but the Johnson and Johnson COVID-19 vaccine expected to start being administered today. That's a report from U.S. Reports. Um, so, uh, since yesterday, the number of deaths is 1,467. Almost 51 million people, 50% of the US population, have received at least one vaccine dose. So that's encouraging. That's 1%, the percentage of the population that have received the vaccine as 15% of the population. We had the feeling that this will move on quickly. Um, in the meantime, the Senate confirms Miguel Cardona as Secretary of Education. And the politics continue. I mean, Washington, the Biden administration started from behind. We know why. Another negative effect from the Trump years, because there wasn't a normal transition period, because there was no willingness on the part of the Trump administration to pass on the information to the arriving Biden administration. And because of that, there were tremendous gaps in every department, from the State Department to the Education Department to immigration to healthcare. Everything was affected by this. So now the Senate confirms Miguel Cardona, Secretary of Education. It's a 64 to 23 vote. Senator Mitt Romney, released from the hospital after getting knocked unconscious for accidental fall over the weekend. So that's a concern because Mitt Romney is one of the people, one of the Republicans with common sense in the Senate. So I hope so. And So those are national news. Those are headlines. Uh, the deposed leader of Myanmar, Aung San Suu Kyi, appears at a hearing, and she's facing new charges. We know there was a coup d'etat in Myanmar, a coup d'etat like it was attempted here in the United States, in the cradle of democracy, on January 6th. There was a coup d'etat attempted by Mr. Trump and his followers. Former President Trump, who spoke at that CPAC meeting. There are consequences from that meeting that we will talk about in other segments. Señores oyentes de USA la Media, vamos a tomar otra breve pausa aquí en USA la Media, la mesa redonda de Roundtable desde el corazón de la ciudad del amor fraternal. Les habla Fernando Méndez, Dani Ramos, controlando la máquina digital. Regresamos en un momento.
Saludos amigos, los invitamos a escuchar La Mesa Redonda, The Roundtable, donde discutimos los temas del día, hablando de política, educación y otros temas, locales, regionales y mundiales, por USA la Radio.
Señores oyentes de USA la Media, estamos aquí de regreso en la Mesa Redonda de Roundtable. Les habla Fernando Méndez, Dani Ramos, controlando la máquina digital. Bueno, más noticias. Tenemos no solamente sobre COVID y las escuelas y todo eso, pues claro que eso es importante, pero okay, here's one that we found sort of annoying because it concerns Goya, one of those companies. Let's say Goya has been tremendous supporter of the Hispanic community in so many ways. As a member of Congreso, as a former reporter, editor on El Sol newspaper, had the opportunity to see people from Goya up close and personal. And I know that they were committed to helping the community. So it appears that they were not following the lead of their CEO. So Goya Foods CEO went to that CPAC meeting in Orlando, Florida, and he repeated Trump's election lies. And that has prompted calls for a boycott of Goya products. A statement signed by Latino advocacy group leaders says Robert Unanue should not be allowed to use his role to attack our democracy. So that's one item in the news that we find annoying on so many counts. One of them is, first of all, Goya is a good product, and the Goya executives, as I said, have been very helpful to the Hispanic community. But here we find out that at the very top of Goya, there is a man who supports Donald Trump's lies, that he won the election, that the election was stolen from him. And so indirectly, we see that CEO, Mr. Robert Unanue, sort of supporting the events of January 6th, in which the Donald Trump supporters rioted and invaded the Capitol. That's an action against our democracy. And so, therefore, I personally, this is not Ursula, this is just me. I personally support a boycott, because that's one way to get back at some of these companies, and they feel that maybe they'll feel it in the pocketbook, maybe not, uh, but whatever little pain we can cause, we'll be happy to contribute to that because they deserve it. So, another annoying item. There are so many annoying items in the news today. Um, Imagine this. Imagine if Donald Trump had actually won the election and Mitch McConnell was still in charge of the Senate. Imagine what he would be doing and saying at this point. He'd be saying, we won, Donald Trump is president, and we will do whatever the president wants. We are the Republican Party, we won the election and we will do what we want. We don't care what the Democrats want. They want minimum wage. It's not going to go anywhere. They want immigration policies that are more humane. No, we're not going to pass any legislation. Um, they want a rescue plan for the economy. No, we're not going to approve anything because they are the do nothing party, and that's what would happen. That was a nightmare that we were contemplating on that night of November 3rd, 2020. I personally was very depressed, especially after Donald Trump came out in the middle of the night and announced that he was the winner. Of course, he wasn't. And of course, he knew. But he thought that by saying so, that would make it a reality. And remember, he was a reality star. And whatever he said on that show, you're fired, that became true. That was his answer to everything, that whatever he says is what would happen. Well, imagine that. Now, there's a preface to say, so I can say the following. Democrats won. The Democrats control the Senate by a very slim margin. One vote by Kamala Harris is the only thing that they have. But they control the House, again, by a very narrow margin. I think it's like what, less than half a dozen votes. But they are in charge. They charge. Say, we won. Elections have consequences. Tell Mitch McConnell to sit down and listen. Do what you have to do. Because, again, if it was McConnell and Kevin McCarthy in charge, you know exactly what would happen. No enlightened legislation would see the light of day. Sorry about the redundant phrasing, but yes, immigration will be what it was for the last 4 years. There will not be any help to the poor cities. That abominable person in charge of education will still be there, in charge of killing the dreams of millions. So, Democrats, you're in charge. Do something. And that's why we are not happy with the failure to move on this $15 minimum wage. That is an absurd number to begin with, but it's 1,000 times better. It's double the 7.25 that it's now, minimum wage, and the disgraceful minimum wage that restaurant workers are paid. Um, so this is a time. Okay, so we understand political reality. We understand you could not pass the economic rescue plan, the 1.9 trillion, which has great support throughout the country, by the way. So we understand you cannot pass that with a $15 minimum wage in the package. And now, because of the parliamentarian that has been removed or will be removed from the final bill if it's passed today in the next few days. Um, but do not give up on that um, minimum wage. It's at some point. Let's say if you make with minimum wage, you could make $100 a day, 500 a week, 2,000 a month. Um, 24,000 a year. Let's say with minimum wage, maximum $30,000 a year, with overtime, with compensation of all sorts. I said $15 minimum wage. With 7.25, whatever it is right now, you are less than $60 a day, 300 a month, $15,000 a year, a little more than $15,000 a year. That is not a living wage. There is no American who can support a family, who can pay rent, transportation, feed himself or herself, feed a family with $15,000 a year. So this $15 minimum is not ideal. There are many companies already paying more. Some of the large companies with a conscience are paying more, $20, $21 an hour. So way above the minimum wage and way above the 7.25 that's been given right now. 3 times as much, in fact, some companies are paying. And so it's possible for these companies to survive, to do well, to thrive, to have a positive bottom line and pay a living wage. $15, again, is not a panacea. It's not the best that we can do. But it's, right now, it's urgent that the Democrats finally use their power, do something, coalesce around this issue. This is not a socialist issue. This is not AOC or Bernie Sanders promoting outrageous ideas. This is common sense. This is a way to help those who need help the most. This is a way to show Mitch McConnell and Kevin McCarthy and the other Republicans that the Democrats are willing to fight for their ideas. They're willing to fight for the people, for the poor. And again, just imagine if you didn't have the power, Mitch McConnell would be doing horrible things to the poor, to immigration, to our educational system. So you have the power to change that, do it. You have the power to do better, to help those in need, do it. Because we don't know what's going to happen in 2 years. Republicans have a plan to come back. they have a plan to come back and to take the House and the Senate again in 2 years. So you have the time now, you have the power at this point, and you don't know for how long. So use it while you can. Bueno, amigos oyentes de Usa la Media, estamos aquí en la mesa redonda de Roundtable desde el corazón de la ciudad del amor fraternal. Les habla Fernando Méndez. Dani Ramos controlando la máquina digital. No se vayan, regresamos en un momento.
Saludos amigos, los invitamos a escuchar La Mesa Redonda de Roundtable, donde discutimos los temas del día, hablando de política, educación y otros temas, locales, regionales y mundiales, por USA la Radio.
Señores oyentes de USA la Media, estamos aquí de nuevo en La Mesa Redonda de Roundtable. Fernando Méndez les habla en compañía de Dani Ramos, controlando la máquina digital. Y bueno, estamos hablando de minimum wage. That is really minimum. And that we're hoping the Democrats, as Madeleine Albright said a long time ago, have the cojones to do something. It's important that you realize that you have the power right now and that you can do something for the people. So, as I mentioned at the end of the last segment, the Republicans are fully invested in doing something. They're coming back. They want to retake. They want to retake the Congress and the Senate, the House and the Senate. So, and they're doing things like attempting to change the Constitution or the way the vote is counted in places like Georgia and Arizona. I don't have all the details, but I saw a report that they want to have electors cast a vote, sort of mirroring the national election, to have electors in Georgia and Arizona and other states to cast the deciding votes. Imagine that. So that's because they are afraid of the electorate. They're afraid of us. They're afraid of the minorities. They're not happy with the changing face of this nation, becoming darker every day, becoming browner every day. And that's why Steve Miller in the Trump administration wanted to stop immigration. So because of that, the Republicans, they have a master plan for 2022. I think there was a report. I think it's Kevin McCarthy was mentioned. The report. I'm not sure if it was his idea or he was just signing at the bottom. But anyway, that the Republicans want to retake the House, and they have targeted vulnerable Democratic candidates around the country, and they are going to throw all the money that they can to replace them with Republicans, with candidates that will do what Mitch McConnell wants to do. And it is disgraceful for the Republicans to do what they're doing. But we already know we have just passed through an era of irresponsible government, unethical government, um, where they were they created an idol that they don't want to get rid of. Um, we heard Lindsey Graham, Lindsey Graham, no spine Lindsey, saying that he was grateful to Donald Trump for allowing him to be in his life, in Donald Trump's life, which is, I mean, we saw signs of that. There was a brief period there where Senator Graham showed that he had other ideas, but all it took was to be chased by the QAnon crowd, by rabid supporters of Trump through an airport, for Lindsey Graham to come back to the fold and apologize and lick Donald Trump's boots and say, I'm sorry, please allow me to be part of your world. And now he's grateful that the president, the former president, has allowed him to return and to live in his world. I don't know what that means, that he's allowed to go to Mar-a-Lago to play golf. I guarantee you one thing, behind his back, Trump is calling him all kinds of derogatory names. Behind his back, he's making fun of his golf swing, his playing. So I don't know, Lindsey Graham. So the Republicans, this CPAC meeting in Orlando was one opportunity for Republicans to express one more time their love and admiration for Donald Trump. So we saw Ted Cruz. Ted Cruz saying, attempting a really clumsy humor, bringing up Cancun, comparing Orlando to Cancun. He said that Cancun was better than Orlando. This guy, what's wrong with him? He's supposed to be a smart man who attended Harvard, who clerked for a Supreme Court judge. He sounds silly. I'm sorry. He sounds uninformed. He sounds ignorant. And just remember, Mr. Cruz, Senator Cruz, Trump accused your father of participating in the assassination of JFK. Where are your principles, your understanding, your ethics, your morals, your common sense? Anyway, people in Texas are very unhappy with you right now. I hope they throw you out whenever the next time you're eligible to renew as a senator. But you certainly don't belong there. And the other person that is abominable and despicable, besides Lindsey Graham, Judge Hawley, among Republicans, even among Republicans, Judge Hawley is not very popular. He didn't make the list of possible candidates. Ted Cruz had 2%. Judge Hawley had 0. Donald Trump at the top was only 50%, 52%, somewhere. So even at that level, Mr. Hawley didn't make it. So Republicans have sold their souls to Donald Trump. They are hoping, as Lindsey Graham said, the nomination is his if he wants it. Lindsey Graham says that after CPAC, there is no question that Donald Trump can be the nominee in 2024 if he wants to. But I'm telling Lindsey Graham is it's going to be very tough in the next year for Mr. Trump to continue in any way to be a free man. There's a lot of stuff happening in the Southern District of New York. Look, the former president of France, Nicolas Sarkozy, they have to go to jail. In fact, he was already condemned, but he's going to do it from his house or something like that. But he was found guilty of embezzlement, of bribery, something like that. And now we need to do the same thing over here. Put Mr. Trump in pinstripes. Anyway, señores oyentes de USA Media, les agradecemos mucho su sintonía en el día de hoy. Se despide Fernando Méndez, Dani Ramos controlando la máquina digital. Los esperamos hasta la próxima.
Saludos amigos, los invitamos a escuchar La Mesa Redonda, The Roundtable, donde discutimos los temas del día, hablando de política, educación y otros temas, locales, regionales y mundiales, por USA la Radio.